So this new report that we've released on investment facilitation is really an update of something that we first wrote in 2013 called Investment Facilitation in Fragile States. And back then we were really just in the infancy of exploring these ideas and beginning to test them out on the ground in Africa and the Middle East. So now, after 7 years or so, we have significantly more experience. We have a sense of how do these specific barriers play out in practice? How do we need to update our theory? How do we think about more effectively working with the local players that are already in these markets and help them raise their skills as well? What is the right mixture of development support versus purely private sector players in these markets? And so we wanted to get some of these new frameworks and ideas out publicly so that others could benefit from them as well. So I think when you're thinking as a donor about how to build an investment facilitation program, you often have several different goals, and some of those goals can be a little bit in tension with each other. Obviously, you want to catalyze a large amount of investment. You want to feel that that investment wouldn't have happened already without your help. You don't want to do things that the private sector would have done anyway, and you want things to happen quickly, hopefully. And so what we really advocate for is taking a portfolio approach where you have some investments where you're perhaps more confident of the success, but perhaps they need your help a little bit less. Perhaps your help is simply accelerating the process rather than making the investment, they're being completely necessary to make that investment happen. And then also working with some earlier stage, younger companies that are going to need much more hand-holding, that may have less than a 50% chance of ultimately receiving investment, but that's where you can truly see the value of that donor support. I think at this point, we've proven, at least to a certain extent, we feel that investment facilitation is an effective approach to development, that it's needed in these markets, that lowering the firm level transaction costs, that building trust between investors and companies that haven't worked together before can really help unlock new and catalytic investment without having to set up new funds necessarily. And so when we look to the future, I think there's a couple important things to think about. One is to make sure that we're not just bringing in external sources of advice, but that our teams, and often a lot of our teams do come from these markets, but that our teams are also upskilling the other local service providers in these markets and helping contribute to a healthy investment and investment advisory ecosystem. I think the other thing is, with any donor-supported program, it shouldn't continue indefinitely. You want essentially countries, companies, investors to become more self-reliant and not need that donor support anymore. And I think we are seeing encouraging signs of that. I think in certain markets are becoming more and more mature, such as Kenya, for example, and there's less of a need for investment support in some of the sectors that have been quite established. And perhaps now the areas for donor support either moves to the next frontier of countries, so whether that's South Sudan or Burkina Faso or Mali, where this help still really is needed, or it moves to sectors that have not been invested in as much in these countries and where there's still a need for specialized sector investment expertise. So I think looking forward, we think that there's a lot of room for us, but also a number of other players to help catalyze private investment into these countries and drive the sustainable development, the inclusive growth that will hopefully result in a happier and more prosperous future for everyone.